So in this tutorial we are going to study generics in Java. So basically you can use generics. Using generics you can define an algorithm or a data structure once, and then you can independently specify the data type that that particular algorithm or data structure will implement. So using generics, you can define an algorithm or a data structure once independently of any specific data type, and then implement them to a wide variety of data types without writing the code again and again for different data types, thus reducing the code redundancy or duplicacy. So here in this tutorial we are going to implement generics in Java, and we will see how we can implement a particular class without uh, not even in one using one data type, but we will pass different data types and we will run the program to see how we can handle a particular class and by passing different data types. So that basically saves a lot of code. So let's implement a class. So let's first create a class and let's name this as generic class generic, and we are going to write it like this. So you can see here that I have written these two arrows and there is t written in it. So basically this t is the reference type which we will pass when we will create an object of this class. So let's create an object of this class, and we will create an object of this generic class of generic class, right? So in order to create a particular object we are going to use generic, and inside this we are going to pass this parameter integer, and then we will create the object using new operator, then generic, then again integer. So we will also create a constructor and we will pass some number in that constructor. So you can see here that I have created a generic class, and this generic class we have written integer inside these two arrows, which specifies that this class will run using the integer reference type. Please note here that we are not using primitive data types here. Primitive data types are int, but here we are using the integer class. So basically integer class is a class. So I will just show you what integer does. So you can see here java.lang.integer. So the integer class wraps a value of the primitive data type int in an object, and we are going to pass this object to our generic class. So this integer keyword is basically, it is a class and it wraps the primitive type int in an object. So you cannot directly pass an integer value. You cannot pass primitive types here, right? So we are going to use this integer which is known as the reference types, and we are going to pass it and the reference will get stored in t. So now we're going to create a reference to this integer value. Remember that this integer class cannot you cannot create an object of this integer class. You can only create a reference object of type int, right? So let's now define a constructor in our generic class. Generic so I'm going to write here to, which means that the object is 18, the reference is 18, and t is basically integer. So what I'm just going to do here is I will just assign ob as o, and then I will create another function which basically returns ob. So ob is basically our reference object of type int. So now we are going to return it. The return type is set as t. Let's name it as get ob, and here I'm just going to write simply object ob. So you can see here when we will call this function, it basically returns our ob reference, which is assigned as o, and o is given at the time of object creation. And this generic constructor will be called, which will assign ob as o, and this get ob function will return the ob reference type. So now we're going to create another function which is the show type of t function. So this function basically displays the type of c, whether it is integer, string. So here I'm just going to print type of t, and in order to get the type of t, we will use ob dot get class dot get name function. So if you want to know the data type of t, or what is the type of t, then you can just call the dot class dot get name function, which returns the type of t, that is whether it is a integer reference type, or a string reference type, or maybe a float reference type. So now we are going to call the functions here. So first I will make a call to the show type function, which will show me the type of the object that we have created of the generic class. So it will return java.lang integer because the type is of int. So now what I'm just going to do here is I am going to assign a value as obj dot get ob. So get ob function is used to return the type or the reference which is passed at the time of object creation. So it is 88 in this case. This means that the value will be equal to 88. So if you want to perform some operations inside this class, in this generic class, you cannot do it directly here. You will have to return the reference type, and then you will have to create operations here, which means that you cannot directly just display or directly add two integers, two integer reference type objects in this generic class. So very simple, you can see here we have just written one single code, one single class, and we are just passing the reference type at the time of object creation. And by passing the reference type, we are actually saving a lot of code duplicacy. So we have used the show type function to display the type of our object, and then we will display the value that this function get ob will return. So I'm going to print the value here. So let me just take another example where we are going to display the value, where we are going to pass the reference type as a string. So what I'm just going to do here is I am going to create an object of generic class, and this is of type string, right? So this was of type integer. So I will just create an object of this generic class passing the type, which is string in this case, and here I will just create an object obj1 and in the constructor I'm just going to pass the string, which is hello world. So I will now use this object of this generic class to display the type of this object1, right? So obj1 dot get ob, which will return the string, and we are just going to store this string in a string variable. Let's call it as value1, and now we're just going to display the value 1, right? So a very simple example to implement generics. You will use generics in data structures while implementing data structures in Java, because if you create a single database or a single algorithm, you will just have to create one class of it, and by calling this single class using the generic, the reference type, you will just pass the reference type, and that particular class will implement itself using that particular data type. So a very efficient program, and it makes our program more compact, and that's the main reason why we use generics in Java. Remember, in order to perform any operations inside this generic class, you will have to, you cannot perform it, you have to return the value and display it in here in the main function. So I've already run the program. Let's see the output. So you can see here the output is type of t is integer in our first case, and it has returned 88, and then second time it's string and it has returned string. So this is how generics work in Java. So thanks for watching.